We'll talk about the prehistoric and Egyptian art and its history. Art has been part of our lives since then that greatly influenced the people up to these days. First, we will going to discuss the prehistoric art that appears million years ago. There are people already exist based on the remains found by the archaeologist. They have the same formation of a human and it is believed to be a Homo sapiens close to a human-like species. During prehistoric art, the lives of the people are quite hard because of its lack of advancement. They use stone tools to hunt animals as a source of living and no proper shelter to live in, and poor sanitation that causes the widely spread of diseases that leads them to death. Prehistoric period is classified into three ages: the Stone Age, Bronze Age, and Iron Age. During this era, we only focuses on the Stone Age since iron and bronze are later on developed and flourished by Egyptian period. Stone Age has three components. That includes Paleolithic. Paleo means old, lithos means stone. Basically, it is old Stone Age. Second, Mesolithic. Meso means middle, lithos means stone, and it is Middle Stone Age. Lastly, the Neolithic, which means neo as new, lithos means stone, so it means New Stone Age. At the next slides, we will going to discuss each components and the arts it possesses. During Paleolithic, or known as Old Stone Age, people were hunter-gatherers. They hunt animals using stone tools as a source of living and used caves and other natural shelters as their homes. People were unsettled depending on the availability of the food resource, move one places to another for survival. The art that was carved and found in different caves represents the culture and the way they lived million years ago. One example is the shaft of the dead man on Lascaux Cave. Lascaux Cave is located at France. This was the artistic expression of early people in their encounters during the period. Animals are realistic, whilst humans are drawn in stick figures, since they give importance to the animals who made them live for a long time for survival. Second, a painting from Casquier Cave. It is named after a diver who discovers the cave named Henry Casquier. The art is mostly resist at cave openings. This prehistoric rock art engraving is located in Calanque de Morguet in Marseille, France, and located in the entrance to the cave underwater due to sea level rise. This also represents the life of the people in the past and their creature exists and express it through rock art engravings. Third, we have the Hall of Bulls in Lascaux Cave. Absence of vegetation is unequivocal in paintings. We all know that during Paleolithic period, the only source of their living is through hunting animals. They don't usually farm and raise livestock, they purely hunt, and it reflects to the painting the different types of animals as a food resource, and that includes the bulls. Fourth is the Venus of Willendorf. Religiousness can be determined by sculptures. Looking at the artwork, you can see a woman, or refers to an ancient goddess of beauty named Venus. This represents a reproductive organs of a woman, symbolizes fertility. It is the traces of beliefs embodied through the artwork. Fifth, hunting scene in Tassili, Algeria. Painting often reflects people's daily living and how they interact with the environment they belong in order to survive and express it through an art. Now, we will going to proceed on Mesolithic, or known as Middle Stone Age. The people are open for hunting, not just in dry land, but also in wetland, and they later domesticated animals as a source of living. And let's proceed to the art that was discovered during Mesolithic. First, painting that was discovered during Mesolithic was the rock art from India, which is the red ochre dominated in paintings, shows experiences through hunting. Second is a rock painting from Bibitka Caves, where art showcases geometrical properties. During this time, people started to build shelters for people using bones from the animals they hunt. Third, Cave of Hands. Artists continued painting on caves as a sign of residency. This shows proofs that people in the early years exist and put marks to different caves they stayed. Fourth is the dance of the Kugel, El Kugel, Catalonia, Spain. Art gave emphasis in humans than animals. During this time, they form ritual practices because people give importance to the animals and believe that it greatly contributes to the society for it gives benefits towards the people.
After the art of Mesolithic era art in the Neolithic Age literally means the New Stone Age, 8000 BC to 3000 BC, represents a spree of innovation. Humans were settling themselves down into agrarian societies, which left them enough spare time to explore some key concepts of civilization, namely religion, measurements, the rudiments of architecture, and writing and art. The newfound climate stability was the one factor that allowed many tribes to abandon their wandering ways and begin to construct more or less permanent villages. No longer dependent, since the end of the Mesolithic era, on herd migration for food supplies. Peoples of the Neolithic were becoming adept at refining farming techniques and building up domesticated herds of their own animals. With an ever-increasing, steady supply of grain and meat, we humans now had time to ponder the big picture and invent some radical technological advances. One of the Neolithic art pieces is pottery. Pottery is still considered to be the diagnostic artifact. By the Neolithic Age, clay modeling in the form of pottery had taken on a life of its own. This pottery was used for religious rituals, for cooking, and for the bearing of water and foodstuffs. Pottery could also be used when eating, as in the creation of bowls. Ceramic sculptures show a great demand for aesthetic embellishment. One of the great masterpieces of late Stone Age art, this extraordinary terracotta sculpture, known as the Thinker or Gandhi Turul, was unearthed in 1956 together with a similar statuette of a female figure, known as the Sitting Woman of Cernavoda, and numerous other similar. Through headless figurines during archaeological excavations of Neolithic settlement and burial debris in the lower Danube region, near Cernavoda in Romania. Created during the Hamangia culture, it is believed to be the oldest known prehistoric sculpture that reflects human introspection, rather than the usual artistic concerns of hunting or fertility. As a result, it has become an iconic sculptural figure of prehistoric art and a striking example of Neolithic art for art's sake. It currently resides in the National Museum of Romanian History, Bucharest. Menhir is a big standing stone. Maybe you are wondering what menhir actually is. Often, this is a large human-made standing stone from the Middle Bronze Age. They are widespread all over Western Europe, especially in France, Great Britain, and Ireland. The word menhir comes from the Old Breton meaning the long stone, and usually they were used to mark a border or the entrance to a dolmen or cemetery. Brittany is a French region where you can see many megaliths, but the Menhir de Champdolent is the largest one, oval in shape and made of pink granite. This menhir is 9.5 meters high and weighs about 100 tons. It was listed as the French historic monument since 1889. Joseph Dichelet, a French archaeologist and museum curator, declared it as one of the most beautiful menhirs in France for the good reason. Stone alignments refers to a row of menhirs. The Karnak stones have been one of the most puzzling archaeological artifacts in the world for hundreds of years. These megalithic stones exist around the village of Karnak in Brittany, France. The stones demonstrate alignments, dolmens, and other ancient geometry which is consistent with other prehistoric sites, but which should not have existed in the period in which they were constructed. The site consists of more than 3,000 prehistoric standing stones, which were cut from local rock and erected by the pre-Celtic people of Brittany. This is the largest such collection of stones in the world. Dolmen is a collective burial chamber. The chambers of dolmens can vary in both shape and size. Some are the size of small boxes, while others are tall and long enough for people to not only stand but also walk and move around inside them. When many dolmen sites were excavated, archaeologists determined that the chambers were often used for the burial of the dead. Stone circles from the name itself refers to the stones standing in the circle. Stonehenge was a place of burial from its beginning to its zenith in the mid-3rd millennium BC. The cremation burial dating to Stonehenge's sarsen stone's face is likely just one of many from this later period of the monument's use and demonstrates that it was still very much a domain of the dead. Purposes or significance. Art suggests a visual record of real-life experiences or hallucinations. The prehistoric era is the witness of the time when there was no record of human activity or writings. By those art pieces of prehistoric period, it can give highlights or imaginations of some phenomena to the new generations. It may serve as religious or magical functions. During the end of the Paleolithic Age, specifically the Middle or Upper Paleolithic Age, humans began to produce the earliest works of art and to engage in religious or spiritual behavior such as burial or rituals. It strengthened clan bonds. The purpose of cave paintings has a social function and that the aesthetics are culturally relative. That is why it would strengthen clan bonds and ceremonies. Structures are usually for worship, not for housing. What we begin to see in our relationship with stone is that it has acted as a metaphysical bridge both in life and death, or transfer from worshipping directly within the heart of the earth in stone chambers to building symbolic representations of these metaphorical wombs into the landscape, passage mounds, dolmens, etc. We still take comfort today in gathering or worshipping within now geometrically perfect, yet still stone-built churches and cathedrals.
Hello everyone, we are now about to discuss Egyptian art that runs from 6000s before Common Era, 30 before Common Era. Egyptians have a lot to offer in the world of art. However, we will focus more on the periods that contributed much to the development of art, starting from pre-dynastic period, early dynastic period, Old Kingdom, Middle, New Kingdom, and Late Period. But before we present what these periods can offer, let's have a discussion on their characteristics first. The art is mainly used for the afterlife. It has always been taught in high school that Egyptians have a strong belief of afterlife. It's just amazing how they can incorporate artistry with that. Sculptures follow certain standards and norms as one of the characteristics too. Such examples would be that figures tend to appear stiff and stoic. It's like giving weight to the eyes of the viewer as if showing some authority. I'll discuss more of these standards, but for now, we'll proceed with another characteristic. So the paintings usually depict everyday activity and follow distinct proportions. It is no wonder why most paintings depict everyday living as it was we are faced, right? Although there have been a belief of afterlife, which I think is something beyond reality and yet a proof, it did not hinder them to paint something that reflects their lives. Lastly, architecture is mainly for the pharaoh's royal monuments. Egyptian rulers were treated closer to gods and therefore judged to treat them with enough loyalty and should be served grandly to keep their world living in harmony. As I promised earlier, I will now discuss the norms and standards of their art, starting off with the proportions. So Egyptians are very strict with proportions as height determines the social ranking of the site. The taller you are, the more mighty you become. The smaller you appear, the lower the rank you are in. They are strict with proportions that they establish grid system to keep the proportions right. Second, strict observation on perspectives. Such rules include the head in a side view, but the eye is drawn in full. The upper body is facing front, and three-fourth view of hips and legs, and feet is facing the same direction where the head does. Third, balance your colors and scales. Men are usually painted in red ochre, and women in yellow. Regarding the issues with scales, size of figures should represent the level of social status, and that men should appear bigger than women even if they have the same status. Lastly, don't forget your symbols. Symbols play a major role in flourishing art. It is not only for aesthetic functions, for it also holds societal values too. Commonly used symbols are ankh, which appears to be a cross with a looped top that signifies life. The jet that appears as a column with a broad base narrowing as it rises the capital and crossed by four parallel lines that suggests stability. And lastly, was scepter that appears to be a staff topped with the head of a cannon that refers to power.
The pre-dynastic period art, 6000 BCE to 3150 BCE. So, pre-dynastic defines as an emerging period of cultures that established the first dynasty in Egypt. So in the pre-dynastic period art, a system of writing or a way of writing was first created, which was known as hieroglyphs or hieroglyphic writing. So in the pre-dynastic period art, the art movement was a two-dimensional imagery and a grid system that was established to maintain the proportions of the art. Another type of art in the pre-dynastic period was the high-quality and richly designed ceramics. Early dynastic period, 3100 BCE to 2686 BCE. King Menes was the first pharaoh that created the first dynasty in Egypt, and he was also the one who unified the Upper and Lower Egypt, and this happened during the early dynasty. So during this dynasty, their strong central government supported the work of scribes, sculptors, and other artists, and also they support and encourage the new artistic methods during the time. So in the early dynastic period art, the art movement was changed into a 3D conventions, and one example of this is a pyramid. One example of the early dynastic period art was the mortuary temples. This was an example of royal tombs in ancient Egypt and was designed to commemorate the reign of the pharaohs in the place of Egypt. Another example of the art was the symbolic positions of seated and standing figures. Old Kingdom art during 2686 BCE to 2181 BCE, and this was composed of the 3 to 6 dynasties
in Egypt. So during the 6th dynasty, the collapse of the central government leads in developing the local art styles. And in the 6th dynasty, it was reigned by King Pepi Merer. And during the Old Kingdom, paintings was developed. One example of this art was the tomb paintings. During this period, decoration inside the pyramids was introduced, and statues of kings were placed in pyramid temples as part of the royal cult. Royal cult is a system of religious veneration and devotion towards a particular figure or object. And the gods during the Old Kingdom art were also depicted with broad shoulders and low smalls of their backs.
Middle Kingdom art during 2125 BCE to 1650 BCE. So Middle Kingdom has been labeled by historians as the Golden Age. So the Middle Kingdom was a time of achievement for the ancient Egyptians because art took on new styles and techniques like the black style, where arts was produced from large black blocks of stone, and trading, arts, and literature flourished in Middle Kingdom. So like for example, the art movements of the Middle Kingdom is casting of bronze develop and statues flourish during Middle Kingdom. Next is coffins imitating body figures started to appear. So these were coffins curved to the outline of the mummy's body and decorated with the face and wig of the deceased. Also, this is served as the substitute bodies in case the mummy's body was lost or destroyed. Canopic jars were sculpted with a human head as a cover. So canopic jars were sculpted with a human head as a cover because human heads assumed to represent the dead. And sometimes the cover of the canopic jars were modeled after the head of Anubis. So Anubis is the god of death and embalming. Next is New Kingdom art during 1550 BCE to 1069 BCE. This is also known as Ramesside period, named after Ramesses I. So during 1290 BCE, New Kingdom was ruled by Ramesses II. Next, it was ruled by Tutankhamun during 1334 BCE. And next is during 1350 BCE, Akhenaten rule and attempts to introduce the worship of a single god. And next is during 1470 BCE, rule of the first female pharaoh named Hatshepsut. And also, the political stability and economic prosperity of New Kingdom support the abundance of artistic masterpieces. So during New Kingdom art, the canopic jars are now in a wide variety of choices. It is because nanay animals like kaning nay dog, dili lang siya human head during Middle Kingdom. So in New Kingdom art, there is a wide variety of choices. Also, the New Kingdom art, temples have large-scale battle scenes as decoration. Because the pharaoh's wealth gained through military dominance created huge prosperity for Egypt and allowed for the proliferation of monumental architecture, especially works that glorified the pharaoh's achievement. So during New Kingdom art, temples was one of the main architectural innovations of the New Kingdom. For example, the Temple of Karnak with its great hypostyle hall. So the last Egyptian art is the late period art during 664 BCE to 332 BCE. So the style of this later periods was affected by the times and limited resources, but the art is still of considerable quality. So during the late period art, sculptures depicted details relative to the natural form, and the development of iron tools allow artisans to work on hard stones.
Let's head with the purpose and significance of Egyptian art, starting with it is primarily concerned with the life after death. Again, Egyptians have a strong belief about afterlife to the extent that they have incorporated this in their different art forms. Second, their art forms showcase hierarchical function. If you belong to a royal family, you tend to possess artworks and could have made a statue out of you or built you a temple when you die. It just shows that the higher your rank is, the more valued you are. Third, art serves as a presentation of a sense of immortality. A lot of paintings, if not talking about social rankings, they are talking about the gods. Talking about the gods judging you after death and where to put you. Sounds scary, doesn't it? But I guess the Egyptians had their way to deal with it. Their art also provides comfort to the dead. Knowing that deterioration, a physical aspect of human beings, is inevitable, they somewhat need to sort their way out by reassuring that they have pleased the gods through their art and riches when they die, which is, by the way, a favor of the royal blood, as it was believed that if you are judged, that you are judged based on your wealth and how much you can please the gods. So here is a list of links which you can visit. These are the links where we get our information from. This is worth the visit. Please give it a shot. And thank you so much for listening. We hope you learned something new.